All right, welcome back, everybody. Kevin here from Top Dog Advertising, and I got another really special guest here today with me. I got Desiree from Bing Zo& Co. And Desiree and I have been working together for a couple months now, and she was kind enough to come on here and tell a little bit about how her experience has been and just what it's been like over the past couple of months growing this business. So, Desiree, without further ado, why don't you just kind of like introduce yourself to everybody, tell everyone a little bit about you and kind of how you got started as a trainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. Excited to be here and share my story. I just have been around animals my whole life. So I grew up on 5 acres and had I think at one point 16 dogs, riding horses bareback. And so I just kind of always understood the nature human bond, and just living amongst like bees and bugs and all that stuff. And so as I got older, I had just kind of developed really strong bonds with my animals, my dogs particularly. And so, went into corporate America and then just slowly got back into like what I was passionate about after being, laid off, every couple of years or so, and decided that, in the process of owning my French bulldogs, that I just kind of became a pro at training, at nutritional coaching, dealing with the allergies. And I just felt such a big need in the industry because so many people, I was answering questions for free nonstop. And it got to the point where it made sense for me to start my business.
That's awesome. Yeah, so talk a little bit more about how you became a trainer. So was it just through your own dogs and you kind of, just taking to it really quickly with your own dogs and figuring out how to like, work on obedience with them or behavioral issues? Like what was it for you?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, right around the time I got them, I became a single dog mom of two. So I had puppies and then was also doing other things. And so, wanting that quality of life, I had kind of sought out and seen dogs that had been trained by professional trainers. So I had sought out
Yeah.
professional training. We did about 4 days of conditioning, but prior to that, I got them all the way through like basic obedience, puppy training, potty training, just all of that was pretty much it was all me. And then I got
Yeah.
to the point where I was dealing with, we're 1 years old now. We're dealing with some resource guarding and just understanding what those, what that language was and how to correct it and that it's normal. I had came across a mentor trainer of mine who was like, I'm just going to condition them for 4 days for the e-collar so you can kind of work on the pulling and the resource guarding, but you've got it from here. You should be a trainer. You're a natural. And that's what kind of got the wheels turning. I had also been doing a lot of the nutritional piece, fresh feeding, raw feeding, and having an Instagram where I was posting. And so I had, coworkers and just random people telling me like, you really need to do something with this. And then the more it kind of just went on, it was like, I'm just doing this for fun, and to help other pet parents. And then it became like, wow, this is a really big need in the community. And I should probably be
Mhm.
getting paid for this. Because at
Wow.
that
Yeah.
point, the knowledge gap was so that I didn't feel like a imposter anymore. So it was like, oh, okay, this is really like some knowledge I can help share that's helping other single dog moms or just pet parents who really want to step into the 2025 of like, feeding fresh food, maybe understanding maybe some of the negatives of kibble, and then just our behavioral issues of really having that quality of life that they envisioned when they got their pet.
That's awesome. Yeah. And your business has grown so fast from when we started working together till now. And I want to get more into that. But so it sounds like to me, just to kind of like finish up that part of the conversation. So it sounds like you were looking for some training help. And like, how did you figure out the first part of it? Was it just like YouTube University as far as like general obedience goes and potty training and stuff like that? Or how was it just kind of like natural to you? How did you figure all that out?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it came naturally, like the puppy training, potty training, the basic, like I just knew to put the collar on them before they hit 16, 18 weeks when they needed their shots because I didn't want to deal with them being silly with the
Yeah.
leash. So those things just came naturally to me. The teeth brushing came naturally to me. Well, I did get recommended by a vet, but moving forward, that kind of became a thing with the water additives. And then from there, it was just research. So having gotten my social work degree and being in school during that time, I became a really great researcher. So I began
Yeah.
researching nonstop. And so I would come home from work, or I would get off at 2:30, 3:30. And if I wasn't doing an internship, I was literally just researching because I was so passionate about feeding them the best possible food and having the right behaviors I was looking for. And I didn't want to do it wrong. I wanted to have it be right, right? Because I'm a perfectionist. So I
Yeah.
wanted it to be right. And so it was just researching. And then I started connecting, like I said, with people on their Being Zoe and Co. Instagram. And I literally began connecting with people all over the world who, veterinarians, nutritionists, different like professionals in the industry, dog trainers that seemed like they were following the pathways that I was interested in following, as far as nutritional goes and behavior modification and stuff goes, and just kind of ran with it and started deciphering like good trainers for maybe not so great trainers, or people just had different modalities than I did. I educated myself on the e-collar because the immediate pet parent is like, I'm not putting a shock collar on my dog. But then
Yeah.
understanding the different brands and the technologies and the different modalities, I was open to all of that. And so I just kind of was a sponge to take it all in.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, and your background has served you so well so far into this business. So, do me a favor, tell everyone a little bit more about that. So, you have a background in like social work, and you worked in corporate America, and all this different stuff. And so, it's funny. You and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about how there's certain things that you learn in your life that you feel like, when am I ever going to use this outside of this specific job? But it's all kind of come full circle for you, it seems, as far as like what you're doing now and building a team and using the CRM, Alfred, that we provide to our clients and stuff like that. So, like, talk a little bit about that and, like, just how that's, been going for you, and just, like what it was like making the transition out of corporate America into running your own business, all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's been kind of cool to look back and say, oh wow, like, starting my career in customer service as a courtesy clerk doing, the grocery store, and then being a cashier, and then going into sales, and then fine jewelry sales. And so I had done phone sales, fine jewelry sales, cold calling, oh sorry,
Yeah.
my wife died, I don't need any jewelry type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so just being a human, dealing with people, and then, 10, 11 years ago now, filtering into corporate America when I moved to Las Vegas, I got into the human resources industry. So I've done anything from payroll to new hires, the onboarding. I'm extremely passionate and have done really well. I think being the first selling at the iPhones when they first came out, and just following through with technology. I was the generation that kind of, came up with the technology, and
Yeah.
just really like being good at, computers. I was able to process the systems and, migrate new, hardware, software, anything that needed to be done, to pretty much manage the business, creating standard operating procedures, managing and updating the policies, working with, global companies. So you have a legal team, you have a HR team in India that maybe runs our systems.
Hmm.
And so that kind of allowed me to work with all levels of like an industry, whether it's the CEO or whether it's, a warehouse worker. And then also just, the skill set of human resources. I've processed payroll. I've moved buildings for companies, and I've handled all of the IT for a smaller company, and then also managed a part of the process for a huge gaming company, that's global. So
Yeah.
that has just literally kind of been the step ladder for me,
Yeah.
to this point where it's like I'm literally using all of those skills now, managing my team, keeping everyone, employee engagement, standard operating procedures. So I feel like it really set me up for success. And it's kind of the perfect culmination of like, now I'm able to do it for myself.
Yeah, totally. And we got connected at such an interesting time now that I look back on it in your career, because at that time you were interested in starting your own business, but like you didn't really, if I'm remembering correctly, you didn't really have like a clear path moving forward about how you were going to get clients and grow this thing, and you were kind of thinking about it. So why don't you tell everyone about that, and like what made you make the leap to come work with us and just even start the business in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about this the other day now that I'm, I've moved into a new home, and, things are going
Yeah.
like so well. Just to think back, not even 6+ months ago,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, had been laid off from another corporate job, and trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. Literally cashed in my 401k, like had 2 grand left, like rent was paid for
Yeah.
the next month, and was like, I'm gonna start my business. I always have been hit up by other business owners, like wanting me to kind of help them run their business. So I had connected with a local new company that was running some safety training.
Hmm.
And I got in there, commission only. And I was like, this just isn't for me. I don't want to start or run another someone else's business.
Yeah.
And I just was like, at the park every day. I'm like, remember messaging you on like Facebook and being like, yeah, sure, let's have a chat, because I'm literally like at the park every day and I've gotten a couple clients, but like this isn't sustainable. I can't just go to the
Yeah,
park every day. And I had thought, like, not having really done a ton of research, and just kind of being laid off, I was like, oh, it's going to be like thousands of dollars for me to, pay for ads and have this huge marketing company. The CRM platforms that my companies are paying for, those must be really expensive. And
exactly.
so I
Yeah,
was like, just elated when I found out that like that's included in my package. Like I can decide we can start with this much in ads and we can grow as we grow. And
yeah,
just like your expertise of just kind of having the coaching of with other, companies coming along,
yeah.
and gave me the confidence to just pull the trigger. And I literally remember giving you the last 1,200 of the 2 grand that I had in my pocket and was like,
Yeah,
I
I was gonna
trust
say,
you. Like, let's do this.
yeah, yeah. I trust you, random guy I met on the internet.
I'm
Like,
giving my debit card to like a random guy I met on Facebook, and
yeah,
it was, but
yeah,
just the way things, and that's how my life happens, because I try to be like a genuine person. I try to do right by people. So it
yeah,
seems like things just always work out. And when you stay positive and, you just kind of let things go the way they're supposed to go, like things just keep getting better. And I think that's the biggest like thing I've taken away from this is like,
yeah,
you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can have an hour conversation with someone. You can kind of get an idea of like the type of
yeah.
person they are and if you want to work with them. And I'm really
Totally.
happy I did, because I'm just like so blessed, because that was the piece that I was missing.
Yeah,
And having someone who like is organized and kind of knew that part of the business and was able to just go boom, okay, let's plug this in. And like you said,
yeah,
you're really going to kind of just kill it, because I feel like you kind of have the back, skills of what's needed to kind of run this. And I've always wanted my own business, so I've always talked to business owners and, just taken mental notes left and right. And so that was just like the piece of the missing puzzle.
yeah, exactly. No, and I remember that conversation saying to you that if you do this, you are the exact type of person that's gonna do very well with this because of all the experience that you have and just like your personality and stuff. And yeah, I mean that's something that I really love about your story is you kind of always seem to have the mentality of I'll jump and the net will appear. Sometimes people can be so conservative in life, and I think there's a time and place to be conservative and not just be foolish with money or your decisions, but you can really think things to death sometimes and be like, is right now is the perfect time? Is this the perfect company for me? And it's like, listen, every once in a while, the perfect thing can come along, but sometimes you just need to get started and make it work. And what I really think about with you that I love about your story, and we'll get more into this, is how you first started off when you were working with us and you're like, I'm only going to do private lessons. And then you realize very quickly, like, hey, I'm going to be able to make a lot more and be a lot more efficient with hiring and running a business if I can do board and trains. But you were not in a massive facility, or you didn't have like your own house with like 50 acres on it or something like that. You were living in a one bedroom apartment at the time, right? And
Yeah.
you were like, I'm just going to put crates in my living room and just do this thing. And so I want to hear more about that from you, because I think sometimes people can get so hung up on like, I don't have the perfect situation to get started. And it's like a chicken or the egg scenario. They don't have the room to take the dogs, so they can't make more money to reinvest in a new place to take more dogs. And so, like, why don't you talk about that and your mentality of just being like, I'm just going to make this happen in the current setting that I have.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I've been thinking about that a lot too. It's like I just was ready to kind of hit the ground running, but I just didn't really know like which way I was going to go. So I did want to do private sessions. I was in the smaller space, and so I'm like, I'm just going to kind of make it happen, because I'm a perfectionist. So I've always like overthought things, and I want things
Hmm.
to be organized. So I wanted my business plan perfect. I wanted all the paperwork in order and all these things. And I remember you saying like, you can do all that later. Like there's things you need to get, like the LLC,
Yeah,
but like other things you can kind of learn as you go. And I'm a person who learns better as I go anyway. So I found that worked like great, because I could just, Google and research and do things as they came up that I needed to create for the business, as opposed to
exactly.
trying to have this whole thing ready to go. I've been, like I said, I wanted my own business for years, ever since I can remember. So I just could never decide what industry or what product I wanted to sell, because I've been in sales for years. And I just couldn't figure out something that I wouldn't get bored with. Like I got
Yeah,
bored selling phones, I got bored selling fine jewelry. And it's just this repetitive motion. I don't get that with the dogs. And so that was just where it was like time to just kind of take the leap and go,
yeah,
hey, let's make it happen. And I'm kind of a glass half full person, but I think it just helped me to just make steps, and then I can go back and fix things or like use those learning lessons to like make things more organized as I go. But just stepping aside and giving myself like I think it's not about not failing, and I think that's the biggest thing is you don't want to fail, but it's like there's gonna be bumps in the road. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you think you're
Hmm.
gonna have this perfect little company ready to go, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
And you're like, I didn't even have a logo, like, but
Hmm.
it was so much fun doing that process. And I felt like I learned more and it was more effective for me by doing it as I went, as opposed to like I didn't even know what it would look like. I was in a little apartment, like how much is a facility? When can I? And there's all these permits and all these things. And it's like, just get started and be a good neighbor and like, don't piss off the guy downstairs and you'll be fine. And then before
Yep.
you know it, you're going to be in a 3-bedroom house. If you like really just kind of like hit the ground running and do what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
the
Because
big,
just to touch on that real quick, you could have taken the route of being like, I can't take dogs out of here, and I'll just have to figure it out, and I'll have to get into a facility and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, a year passes you by, and you're still kind of like stuck. And I've seen that happen with many people. And I think that is really the key takeaway. That's the best advice I think that anybody is probably going to take out of this, is like where there's a will, there's a way. And even though it's like kind of bending the rules and maybe breaking the rules depending on, how you perceive it,
right.
if you're kind to the people around you and you don't have barking dogs 24/7, or you just kind of like do what you can. Like I'll never forget, we have these clients we've been working with for years, and Megan had said to me one time, she's like, I'm not really supposed to take boarding trains where I'm living. She's like, but I just kind of like keep the dogs in my car, I back the car into my garage, and I bring them into the house, and no one ever says anything. But so many people are so fearful of like, what if I get caught? What if something bad happens from this? And again, like there's a caveat. If you really feel like you're going to put yourself in a bad position, don't do it. But what we're more so talking about is like if you have dreams and something you're really chasing after, and the difference between you getting to that goal and achieving your dream versus not is maybe ruffling a few feathers or having a dog or a neighbor that's like, why is it so noisy or something like that? It's like you kind of have to take that risk, or else like you're going to just stay stuck for forever.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's like I knew my neighbors, I was the lady with the Frenchies, like it just was a
Yeah.
natural like next step. And so nobody really like fussed with me. I was already really cool with everyone in my community.
Yeah.
I was in an apartment, so even coming to the new house, I reviewed the different locations I could have because the end goal is to buy in the next year to 2 years max, depending on the market, and then have my
Yeah.
own space and make sure that I'm in the right location with the right permitting and the right city for what I want to do in my home and not disturb the neighbors. But like you said, backing into the garage, this particular HOA is managed in a way that I can confidently run, my business without A, disturbing the neighbors, B, causing any issues, or C, getting myself in trouble. And it's a means to an end. So,
Yeah.
as soon as I'm able to, I'd love to have a facility and or my
Yeah.
own home to run the business. And things have just progressed so quickly that you have to start somewhere. Like I
Yeah.
realized in hindsight, like every dog trainer in Vegas like runs their business from their home, it seems like
Yeah.
I've heard clients mention other quotes that they were going to take their dog to their home and do the same thing I'm doing. And so the more I realize that I've met other business owners who are bringing me to their home to hire them, and they're running their business from their home. It's like architecture
Yeah.
or something. But I'm like, hey, the only reason mine is frowned upon is because I have a dog. So,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you don't hear a peep. You don't hear any peep. I have 4 dogs in my house right now. One just went home. I had 5. I've had up to 8 in my apartment. And,
Yeah.
it's like no issue because there's not one sound. They're in and out. Most of the time it parks with potties. You'll hear the neighbor dogs barking. You'll hear XYZ going on, but you won't hear anything from here because they're asleep because they just did a training.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
this is such a helpful conversation we're having, because all the people that I work with that are the most successful, they all did this, which is like you see them now in like your case, like in the 3-bedroom apartment, and it's easy to look at that and go like, well, of course she's got room to take on dogs now, and she doesn't have to keep them in her room or her living room. But it's like, trust me, like I was on calls with you and you had dogs like all over the place. And so it's just like I have another client, Lucas, who he said to me one time, he's like, I'm a bit of a psycho, but he's like, but I've kept like 20 dogs inside of my house with me at one point. He's like, because I know that it allows me to make enough money that I can then reinvest in the next thing. And so there's just, I think the main takeaway from this is like, there's going to be some discomfort. Anytime there's growth, there's discomfort. And as a business owner, it's so easy to think like, okay, I want to grow this business. And then once it gets uncomfortable and like you're facing this pain of whether, you're a dog trainer and you're have all these dogs around and there's different problems that arise from that. It's like, it's never going to feel easy getting to the next level. Anytime you're putting some sort of stress on your team and your business to get to that next level, to unlock that next phase, it's not just going to feel like this linear line of super easy to get there. It's a straight line of growth. It just doesn't work like that. There's always going to be setbacks and difficulties with that.
Yeah, I'm just laughing, thinking of all like, I'm like, okay, great. As soon as I get some people to help, like, then, it won't be such a big deal. And then I get people to
Yeah.
help, and it's like, I have to interview, I have to hire, I have to post the job, I have to
Yeah.
train these people. Like, it's a whole nother set of issues. And then you're, having, enough dogs to have 3 or 4 people to help. So then you're like, okay, I need to start really working on my employee engagement. I need to finish my employee handbook. I need to really dive into SOPs, which I didn't need before because it was just
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
And we have insurance. I've got to make sure they're added to all the insurances. And it's just like so many things. So you fix
Yeah.
something, or like you become a pro at one thing, and then boom, it's like a whole nother list of like things. And so, I've gotten used to just like putting out fires and like, oh,
Exactly.
it's just the next thing that's gonna come. Like it's never gonna be it's always like kind of mentally like taxing, just because you're not just like doing a job. It's a new job every day. One day you're payroll, one day you're, employee engagement, one day you're a dog trainer, one day you're the owner, one day you're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's just rolling with the punches. And like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I have goals to own other businesses where I don't maybe have dogs in my house. And so I'm, even more so realizing like every time I take that next step, like I'm in a 3-bedroom house now, like that's pretty amazing considering like I was laid off in June last year and didn't know how I was
Yeah.
going to pay my rent in November. So,
Yeah.
and
In 6 months, like your life has completely changed. It's insane.
100%. Yeah, I would have
Yeah.
never thought like if when I gave you my debit card in September that like I would be moving into a house by March.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And
So
just to touch on this too, the amount of people I've spoken to, and this is not me like, poking fun at anybody. It's just a reality because I've done this, when I first got into business too, where I'll talk to somebody and they'll say something to me like, well, I'm working on getting my LLC or I'm working on getting my insurance. And then I talk to him a couple weeks later. Oh yeah, I'm working on getting that. I'm hoping to have that done in the next couple of weeks. It's like, why are you working on it? Why don't you just do it today?
yeah.
It's as simple as going to like LegalZoom or going to, InkFile or going to any, variety of these websites that do this and paying a fee and having it done today and getting it in the mail in a couple of days or calling Liberty Mutual or, one of these other insurance companies and saying, "Hey, I want to buy $1 million insurance policy, general liability insurance policy." Cool. That's $500 for the year. Done. It's like these are not things that you work on. These are things that you do and you check the box and you're done with it. You work on building a business. You work on building systems and processes. You don't work on like a task for like 6 months. You know what I mean?
I think that's the big transition though, is like I was very task oriented. So I had like I think I finally tossed them in the move this week, like a stack of like papers of notes of just things I'd written down, like before I got used
Yeah.
to adding clients to the system, like lists of things that when I chatted with you and Jamie and Angel, and I was like, okay, I got to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And I stopped using lists. I've always been really digital with my calendar, but I
Hmm.
stopped like a second I grab my pen to write it down, I'm like, hang on, like if they're asking me to change their time because they forgot to clock in, I'm like, yeah, I used to say like shoot me an email or like send me a text. And then now I'm like, okay, great, give me 1 sec. And I just do it right
Yeah.
there. And I'm like, you're good. Because I don't
Hmm.
want that to add to the pile because there's something else coming tomorrow that's not what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And what you were saying before about being an entrepreneur, I heard this somebody say this one time and it always stuck with me. It's like flying an airplane and fixing it at the same time. And it's like, you're slaying a dragon. You cut off one head, you cut off its head, and then three more pop out.
Literally.
And it really is like that. And what I always think about is it's so easy to look at a massive business like Amazon or Apple or Google and think like, wow, that's quite an impressive business. The amount of like incredibly complex problems they needed to solve to do that. The logistical nightmare that Amazon must be. It's like if you think that fixing, getting an LLC and how do I do that? It's like you just think about how the problems only get more and more difficult and bigger to solve as the business grows, you know? But that's why
100%.
you have to fall, that's why you need to love doing it, is because if you're
Yeah.
just doing it for the end result, the goal of like being the owner of a successful dog training business, that's going to be a very painful journey versus if you thinking of it in the terms of like I like being an entrepreneur. Yeah, there's certain things about it of my job I don't like doing, but I like the idea of growing a business. Like it's the journey, not the end result, as cliche as that may be.
No, yeah, no, 100%. And that's my thing. Is like I really do enjoy like I knew this was the next step for me. I just didn't quite know how I was going to get there because, you know, every time I start a new job, it was, you start from the beginning and it's like, you got to prove yourself and da, da, da. And when you've been doing something for so long and you're just really great at it and you start to realize that you are like a high quality employee and you're just, it doesn't matter if I'm in school, working two jobs, like the quality of my work is just amazing.
Yeah.
You start to realize that you really are an asset to these companies, then you get laid off again 4 years later. You start to go, and then like, yeah, there's all these things, but if I really want to stop and not do anything today, or if my dog rips his toenail out by accident at the park and I have to take him to the vet, like right now, I can stop this whole
Yeah.
and say, and it's great having a dog business because heaven forbid my dog is sick. It's like they're totally going to be understanding.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
especially being a single dog mom.
Nobody questions that at all, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk more about your journey here. So when we first started working together, like you said, you gave me your last bit of money to kind of like get this thing going. And you were like, hey, I'm trusting you. And by the way, I always love that because I'm like, no pressure, you know, like someone just
Yeah.
gave me their
No
last couple
pressure.
dollars and like, I just need to make it happen now. But all jokes aside, like I knew you were going to do extremely well with this and you just needed to be given the opportunity. So tell everyone a little bit about like what that first month was like, if you can put yourself back in those shoes, or the first 60 days even of like not having a consistent way of getting clients to all of a sudden, where you ended up 30, 60 days later. What was that like?
Yeah, no, I'll never forget it. It's like it was yesterday. I'm like going to the park. I'd printed some like Zazzle business cards and was like giving people out with my like, name
Yeah.
and personal phone number. I just places I frequent, farmers market, dog store, like just always people I chatted with. And I got a
Yeah.
couple like things. I had a really crappy first client who was like, oh, you're not a dog trainer, but wanted me to train their dog.
Yeah.
And then like proceeded to use me for boarding for a while. But it was just not fair because he wasn't being consistent with the dog. And it was like not a great client, like dropping off whenever he wanted, pinging me last minute, would never send me the vaccination records. Like, and especially once I got further along with the business, I'm like, this isn't the type of client I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I just need them to be able to find me. And so that's what just made so much sense. And then, once everything got going, it was like 4 days. Like within 4 days, you were like, oh, give me 10 days, I think. And it was like 4 days. I was getting calls. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like I'm so blessed because I'm like getting the first two calls like on a Friday or Saturday. I met with them on a Monday. My first trainee just went home like 2 hours ago. His mom picked him up. She travels regularly. So I get him back like every couple weeks. And they paid me 2,000 in cash. And I literally like got my card, probably cried and like went to the bank and paid my rent.
Yeah.
So that was like such a blessing. And then I also
Yeah.
sold the next package, like the first two people I met, sold them packages. And then it was just kind of consistent from there. It was like a call or two here and there. I was paying, 500 in ads or something.
Yeah.
And just kind of, what I could manage anyway, because between getting used to the CRM and like getting everything up to speed with the LLC and the insurance, because I want to do things as by the book as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Then, that was just time consuming. I was working 12 hours a day. I was up till midnight, built my website myself, but it was like I was on fire. Like I got on, Fiverr and got my logo done. And it was like t-shirts and, business cards, legit business cards, and just getting everything like a phone number that's not my personal cell phone number, just really like making it legit. And at the same time, there's like calls flooding in and I'm like having to go train dogs and meet clients.
Yeah.
And I do best like that, like, under pressure. So it worked for me because then it was like, okay, now I need help. And then it was like, okay, now let me start with that process. And then it was just pulling that knowledge from before and just
Yeah.
pausing and going, wait a minute, I know how to do this part. Let me stop and like post this job and like write this little job description and I have no problem going and doing interviews. So that was the easy part. And then just the scaling and like not scaling too quickly, and just kind of like
Yeah.
managing that flow as you go, and then just more stuff popping up nonstop. But and then adding more ads and so that we can like meet payroll and like obviously
Yeah.
meet our next goal. So raising the goals, like even if it's just mentally, and looking at the numbers and going, oh wow, that was pretty amazing first 2 months. Like I made 9 grand my first month. Okay, I made 10 grand my second month. Okay, great. I've continued to make 10 grand every month. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing. Let's see what we can do now if we just add a couple more consultations or hire a person to help.
Yeah.
And then it was just the next goal was visual, like from there, and then you just kind of take it to the next level. And that's just how it's been. And now here we are, not even six
Yeah.
months later, and I'm, averaging like 10 to 12 grand a month, pretty steady. And
Yeah.
it's gonna
That's
continue
incredible.
soon. So
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, and that's like a business that a lot of people dream of having, making 10 grand in a month. Like that's a number that you hear and you're like, I'm not sure if I'll ever get there. And that's obviously over a six-figure business, 120K a year. And I think the thing that is so interesting about this is we all have so many self-limiting beliefs in our life. And you think like 10 grand, I'll never get there. Or even the amount of people that say to me, like, I want to make 4 or 5 grand a month, I'd be happy. And I'm like, with the business that you're in, if you can take on a couple board and trains and you sell them for 2 to 4 grand, you know, 10 grand is not as far away as you may feel like it is. It's about doing the things, doing the little things right every single day. And I heard somebody say one time that like business is not complex, but it's not easy. And I think that that's like you're really a good example of that. It's like you just got to make sure that you check every single box that you're supposed to check every single day, and that's like answering your leads, setting consultations, doing the best you can with it with all of those, and trying to make as many sales as you can. And that's another thing I want to talk about is you and I did a coaching call probably a couple months ago now, maybe about 45 days ago, 60 days ago now, where we were talking about setting your next set of goals, and I was like, you close everybody that you meet with. And so like you don't have a sales problem, you have an appointment setting problem. And so what you did with that is that you immediately went out and found somebody to start like setting appointments for you. So do me a favor, talk about that because I think this is something that could be really helpful to people, just like getting an admin in to help you set appointments and how much that's like impacted your business. Shout out to Betty. We love Betty.
Yeah, Betty is amazing. Yeah, I'm so thankful, and I'm glad that like I have you as a resource, and just like the calls that we have weekly with the other trainers, because just hearing what they're going through and that piece of it, and then just knowing like, okay, when I get to this point where it's like too much, that the next step is like having someone that can actually like manage some of those calls, and just finding someone who, being open to it, because that was the hardest thing, was wrapping my head around like my schedule's not a set schedule. Like, we're a small business. Like I can't offer you a ton of hours just yet, but it's kind of like when the call comes in, you really should be answering it. So having that conversation with her, and her being familiar with the platform we use, like she's like a professional appointment setter. She's done this. And then, being able to like pay her a salary that we agree on. And just like, she hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So, if there's things going on and I'm out training the new hires, or I'm out running a training, or I'm picking up a dog, I know that she's got it. Like I'll shoot her an email on the weekend. I'm like, hey, can you set this appointment? So and so's bringing their dog back for a board and train, or for a boarding next week or something. And like, I can't even hit send before she's like done. And
Yeah.
I'm like, please charge me for your time. She's like, oh, don't worry about it. It just took me a half a second. And I'm like, so, okay, no worries. But
Yeah.
it's just such a blessing, because I feel like I found a me, and I found like somebody that's like passionate about what we're doing. She loves dogs. It was just a learning curve of the language of dog training and stuff.
Yeah.
And the calls, like we were in the middle of the move. So I haven't even had a chance to like properly train her. And so for her to be able to go back and refer to those calls, and having been familiar with the system, and even though it's built differently, we're going in, we're adding better detailed notes, and we're, charging and sending intake forms and contracts. And, she's even adjusted some things in the system because she understands like how the system works. So that's taken a huge weight off my shoulders, because it was a lot going out physically, especially once I got more consultations and more like private sessions I had to go do.
Yeah.
And still wanting to eventually take a day off, having her was like crucial.
God forbid you take a day off.
Yeah.
I mean, like no days off, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But
what I
I,
tell
but
people.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's such a good takeaway from that is you can't do everything yourself. And ironically, you can try to do everything yourself, but you can actually be operating your business in a suboptimal way. So you could think like I'm saving money by not having somebody answer calls for me. And, how would I even find that person? What if they're not as good as me? And all these fears that go through everyone's head when they go to start hiring. But the truth is like if you get even use simple numbers, 5 leads in a week or something like that, and you're only getting to one or two of them, and had you set consultations with the other three or four of them and wait made one more sale, you're talking about thousands of dollars. And if that happens every single week that you miss out on a sale or two sales, you're talking about potentially losing out in some cases on like 5 to 10 grand every single week. And so, I can't stress this enough. I know Angel and I have talked about this on different like episodes that we've recorded and stuff like that. The importance of, getting to your leads quickly, having somebody who, and that can be you in the beginning, and it's probably going to have to be you in the beginning, but as soon as you're in a place to be able to feel like I have too much going on here and stuff is slipping through the cracks and not getting the most out of these leads, you need to get somebody in to do that, or else it's just silly and you're missing out on money.
Oh yeah, no, and my only regret is that didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
And it's like so great because she, is able to kind of manage all of that, and I'm able to like do all the other stuff that I should be doing. And then,
Yeah.
I see different things. I'm still researching. I still want to grow the business. I still want to like organize things and SOPs and different stuff like that. And then obviously our events, and keeping everyone engaged. But I can only do so much. And the business isn't strong if I'm like break my leg, like there's nothing, the business falls apart. So it's like,
Exactly.
how
Yep.
strong is your business? How secure is your business? And it's like, I had an epiphany the other day when I took 3 days off, kind of, sort of, I say taking days off, but it's really like a couple hours here and
Still
there.
answering emails and text, I'm sure,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah,
yeah,
but I'm not like physically out doing a training. That's what I
yeah,
consider
yeah,
like taking a day off. So, and I'm moving and unpacking, and like Betty scheduled like 4.5 consultations that week. And like the minute I like went back on Thursday and Friday, I had like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
yeah,
And I think I almost cried because I was like, this is what it's all about. Like business is moving, money is coming in, she's taking payments. Like we charge for the first session. We kind of sell the consultation in the first session because it makes sense to go right from temperament evaluation to let me show you how to fix it, especially with like in-house manners. And then, hey, let's do a board and train, in a week. Or sometimes I've done the session and taken the dog home. Like,
yeah.
and so like to just have that money trickling in is awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Just to go inside of like your psyche for a second, like what was it for you that made you feel like in the beginning before you hired Betty, like, okay, I can't do that yet? Or like what stopped you from making that hire? Was it just like you feeling like I'm not there yet? Or like what was it for? Because I want to see if there's other people who are listening to this that can probably maybe identify with that a little bit. And then the conversation after this will probably help them, gain some clarity on that.
Yeah, so I could definitely answer that. My biggest thing was like not knowing how I was going to structure her
Hmm.
and like train her and just, because everything was so like I was doing it myself and I just have the sales background and the customer service background and it's not a lot of hours and it's not a lot of money. How am I going to find somebody of that caliber, what I'm looking for? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot on the line. Like if it was very stressful the first week, the first 2 or 3 calls she took, I had to like sit on my hands because I was like, oh, like this is a lot
Yeah.
of money, and what if she doesn't like book the
Yeah.
consult and so it was stressful. So it was that piece of it. And then like, I have tell all of my people, like, I want to do right by my people.
Yeah.
I have a whole spiel on work-life balance. I've had people with seizures. I've had grandmas pass away or grandpas pass away. In my short time, I've had a girl with a brain bleed that went into the ICU. I've had everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I never, am like, I need you to come in. It's like, go do what you need to do,
Yeah.
and then like, we'll figure it out. If I have to like do it all myself, like I was doing it myself anyway. So it's like, I'm never going to make, I've felt like that the 2 times I was ever sick and had health issues when I was working in my career. And it was the worst feeling in my life. Like, I had shoulder surgery and I had kidney stones in the same year. And that's the worst illnesses I've ever had. And it was miserable. And I had the most horriblest job and they fired me for it because I took a day off for having kidney stones. So I just don't
Insane.
ever want anybody to feel like that. And that is not the type of, I want to enjoy running my own business and I want people to enjoy walking in the front door or into my facility every day. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to do right by her. And I just didn't think I could afford someone of that caliber at the moment who was going to, one, give me what I needed, like my ROI.
Yeah.
Until like, you're like, well, one thing pays for itself. And I'm like, duh, Desiree, like get this, get this on,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. it's so easy to look at somebody else's business and like, why haven't they hired like an admin person yet? Why don't they hire another trainer? It's like, but when you're the one who's inside the business making the decisions, you can start getting your judgment can start getting very clouded. And you're like, well, I just don't want to pay that money. And it's about building a really successful business. It's not about being as profitable as humanly possible every single second, every single day of the week. Businesses don't grow like that. I mean, there's businesses that have operated for a decade and haven't turned a profit, you know? Now, I'm not saying to run your dog training business like that. Obviously, you want to make a profit, but the point is like when you look at really big players, they're not looking at what's happening today or did I have to pay somebody, $100 this week to answer calls for me or something like that. They're like, what is going to help us be as profitable a year as possible a year from now? And the really interesting thing for you is like it's not as expensive as we even first discussed. I mean, when we first were talking about getting somebody hired, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing that number, but you're not talking about $5,000 a month or 60 grand a year or something like that. You're talking about in the hundreds to pay somebody to do this, right?
Oh yeah, like I'm getting ready to process payroll and like their 2 week salaries is like a couple hundred each at the most.
Yeah.
If they're hitting 20 plus hours. But yeah, I pay them anywhere between 10 and 12 to start. Or I take started everybody at 10 and then as they've stayed with me over the months, I do 30-day reviews. I didn't do a 60-day review for her just because we were moving, but she's getting a 90-day review. She's getting a
Yeah.
50-cent raise. She'll be at 12.50 and she's being promoted to assistant or to office manager because she helps with all the new hires. She's been with me the longest. She's just super thorough. She helps me train,
Yeah.
anything I need admin wise and stuff like that. And then Betty, who does the calls, I found her through the Overpass app. We went off of the Overpass website and then
Yeah.
just pay her directly via Zelle. We went over the contracts. We agreed on a number. And I'm actually in the process of having a conversation with her this coming week because she says in the past what's worked for her is because she's so thorough, she works on the weekends, she's not charging me for little things when she jumps online and just responds real quick because she's like me, she can't get a notification and not answer it.
Yeah.
So she's like, I don't care if I'm like doing something else, I'll pause, even if it's on a weekend. And so I'm looking at doing like a salary position for her where it's still within that range, but maybe I give her a couple extra dollars and we just say, hey, this is what your monthly is or what your biweekly is.
Yeah.
And then she's just kind of free to do her thing. She's put together, spreadsheets of like PowerPoints with every dog breed and temperament. And she's like, wants me to review it so we can add the logo so we can use it for the new hires. And so it's just, she's extremely valuable. So I just want to make sure, like, even in this moment where we're only making, 10 grand a month, it's like, I still want to make sure that she gets her, what she's
Exactly. Yeah.
valued at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that the thing that's so amazing about living in 2025 is that you can recruit talent from anywhere in the world, And we have people that are based in the Philippines, we have people that are based in Pakistan, we have several US based employees. I'm looking to add somebody else to our team that's going to be I think based in Mexico. And it's just crazy how like in the 1990s this would have been like not possible. But now all of a sudden you're in a position where you can hire people, have really, really hardworking team members, and before you know it, like you have a team of people all over who are willing to work hard for you and work just as hard sometimes as you're willing to work in your business.
Yeah, and the work-life balance, like the flexibility too of just being able to be like remote or semi-remote. Like Betty's in Peru. So,
Yeah,
I'm sad she won't be able to come to the holiday party, but other than that, it's like, Zoom and WhatsApp and chats.
yeah,
It's like, and then of course incorporating the employee engagement, we're going to have a team meeting and we're going to throw her on the Zoom on the TV and she'll be here
yeah,
in spirit. And just including them, like if she doesn't get to come to the holiday party, she gets a $50 gift card and just, stuff
yes,
like that.
yeah,
I've managed new hires and different, things when it comes to like onboarding people that are field service techs all over the country, and making them feel because you get a different experience when you start at the main office versus
right, exactly.
and then being in sales. We were at a store in Jared, but the home office gets all the good stuff. So you see all these
Yep,
invites for home office events, but you never see. So I'm always really privy to that. So whether they're my trainers that are only here once a week, like I'm putting together a Google business account so we can have like a chat that runs, that gives them regular updates, that keeps them engaged in the business, that maybe sends out fun facts, just
yep,
anything to kind of engage people. But it's great to have literally the world at your fingertips. I'll call Chase to find out if I want to use them for my business account. And it's a gal from the Philippines. And it's like, that's not unheard of. And I've only had one client complain, and it was like, is this a big business or a small business? Like, I don't want,
Yeah.
I want to work with one person. And I just happened to answer that day. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm the owner and the trainer. I can
Yeah.
help you. We're
Yeah.
a small business, and so I get that. Like, I don't want it to sound like we're this big business, but I also want it to be very professional. So there's this fine line of like being a business and being a professional business, but also, being a human and being like, hey, I also run the business as well. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And the truth is there's going to be every once in a while that can happen where someone's like, this seems like a bigger business. I'm looking for a local dog trainer. It's like, okay, well, you can either just, you can decide one of two things from that. You can either say like, well, I don't like when people say that, so I'm just going to always do it myself then. Or you can just say, you know what? If I'm going to lose somebody every once in a while because like that's what they're looking for, that's what they're putting their foot down on for some bizarre reason, it's like, okay, then that's just not my client anymore. That's not who I serve. Because at the end of the day, you got to make the decision of what do I want out of this company? What do I want to, where do I want to see this go in the next 5, 10 years? And I just think that like you're a testament to like you gotta build the systems and you gotta build the team, or else you're gonna be stuck doing it forever yourself. And the problem with that is inevitably in a year, you're gonna start feeling burned out and you're gonna be like, I don't want to do this anymore, and then you don't want to talk to your clients anymore. It's like, don't let yourself get to that point to finally feel like I need to make a change here. It's like do it preemptively, hire people strategically, and you're gonna be just so much better off because of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I already felt like that, even, being in the small space and then like, bringing people on and just, that whole process. I'm like, I have to bring somebody on because I can't possibly do this myself anymore. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And then just having the sales background of being like, not everybody is going to be my client. Like
Yeah.
I'm very blessed. I have no jerk clients. Like everyone is amazing. I don't have any clients hitting on me anymore. It's just weird stuff that used to happen when I was like organically meeting people at the park.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, I'm not here for a date. I'm here for some business, and just stupid stuff,
Yeah.
and it's more like people who are really calling to look for a professional trainer, and they're getting that person on the other end of the phone, whether it's myself or Betty. She's like, we had a call the other day and she's going on with the lingo already. And I was so proud of her because I'm like, listen to you go, with the,
Yeah.
all the right language and stuff to sell the client on the phone, to let them know. Cause I'm like, I want you to feel like you're here. I want
Yeah.
you to feel like you know exactly what's going on when these dogs are being trained. You can see the updates, and just follow it. Just whatever the next step is,
Yeah.
just make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the number one thing that people mess up when they go to hire somebody is they hire somebody, they don't train them, and they don't have like training manuals in place. They don't meet with them regularly to review sales calls, and then it bombs because the person was never trained. And then they're like, see, you just can't hire anybody to do it. You can't find good help anymore. It's like, no, you need to spend time. You need to spend as much time investing into your team and training them up as you do into like training the dogs, right? It's like you wouldn't just like train a dog, put a couple reps in and be like, see, it doesn't work or something like that. It's like, no, you spend hours doing that. And so just going back to what you were talking before, because I feel like this is a really tactical piece of advice. Where Desiree, where you got this person hired, Betty was off of I think it's Overpass VAs or something like that, and they have a lot of talent from Central and South America, and so I highly recommend that to anybody who's listening to this. Worst case scenario, you put up a job listing on there, it's totally free, doesn't cost you anything. The total upside is that like maybe you find somebody really good, and you can structure different deals with them, where it can be like, hey, I'll pay you a base salary of this, and then every call you book, every consultation you book for me, you get $25 for every consultation you book, or you just pay them a flat rate. But the benefit of them being in different countries is like the exchange rate is so favorable that it's not like you're like underpaying them. You're paying them a good salary. They're very happy, and it just doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to get somebody in to help you, with the phones in your business.
Yeah, and it feels good knowing that you're like, really doing right by someone, and that, that you're making a difference in their life. That's my biggest thing is like, I
Yeah.
want to do right by my people. So I want them to be happy. I want them to make money too. And so that really allows me to do that. So it's very, very, beneficial for both sides. And
Yeah.
she's just great. So I have no complaints.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the thing that's so cool about it too, is like you like fall in love with these people. Like the people that I have on our team, like I love talking to them. And I was just talking to Angel about that this morning. Like when we have our ads call twice a week, like we're all laughing and having a good time. It's not something that feels like I mean, I know it's work, and at the end of the day, it's not lost on me. Like I'm the boss. I'm sure people like around me are gonna, act differently and stuff like that. But the truth is like I see people communicating in the Slack channel and they're having a good time, and people have like formed relationships and friendships and stuff like that. It's on you. It's like you get the opportunity to build a really good company culture, to have fun, and I think at the end of the day, like you just can't do everything yourself. So you have to invest in other people. But with
Yeah.
that being said, this wouldn't be a top dog advertising client success call if we didn't talk about your sales process a little bit. So let's get into that because that's something that you are very, very good at. So do me a favor, talk a little bit about that, walk everybody through kind of how you handle that start to finish when a new lead comes in, all the way through the time of like setting them for their consultation and getting them to sign up. What is your philosophy? Like how do you guys handle all that?
Yeah, so just kind of with my sales experience, getting them, when they're hot, like,
Yep.
answering the phone when, when they call is great. And even if I can't, like I respond to them right away. We get the automated message with them and then they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
call me anytime, or they'll call me at a specific time. And if they tell me 2:30, I have a call at 2:30 today. Like I will call
Yep.
her at 2:30 today. And then it's just like, tell me about your dog, like, because immediately they're going to get on the phone and ask about pricing. How much is this? And then I'm just getting pricing, and it's like
Hmm.
overcoming objections and like, or just not being offended if they don't buy type of stuff, but just,
Yeah.
getting them to first 10, 20 minutes, tell you about your dog. Okay, great. What are we working with? How old? Because I can't offer any services until I know what I'm dealing with, so then I can maybe rattle off something. But the goal is to not chat about pricing until we get there. Everything is custom, it all depends on temperament, what we're working with. You don't want me to charge you 3 grand or 3,800 when maybe it's a $2,500 package because your dog doesn't have a ton of behavior modification that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so they never really fight me on that. Every now and again, you'll get someone just really wants pricing and I'll give them a ballpark. But for the most part, it's just really about building the value. So,
Yeah.
overcoming the objection and building the value. Okay, great. They'll say, oh yeah, I was just calling about pricing. Okay, great. Tell me about your dog. Tell me about your pricing. Tell me about
Yeah.
your baby. I just
Yeah.
completely ignore them because my process is the same regardless of who's calling and what they're saying. But the double-edged sword is my process is also customized to every single client. So I say like, there's my spiel, but then there's also like every conversation sounds like I'm passionate and I'm like super stoked to meet their dog. And it's true, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can't wait to help you guys. And I just immediately put myself in the shoes of when they were little. And I'm like, oh my God, I really need a dog trainer. Like I just want to have this experience of quality of life with my dog. And I just can't quite get there on my own. And just the nutritional piece and all of it, I just put myself in their shoes and it just works.
That's
And
awesome.
then I
That's
took
great
something
advice.
from you, like, that you did, and you've mentioned in other calls, and I realized that you did with me in our initial call, and it was like,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, like, I want to start this business and, things are just moving really slow, organic leads, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, I can help you with that. And so I just always make sure, like, they're like telling me about their problem. Okay, great. Yeah, we can totally help you with that. This is normal puppy behavior.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh," like, thank God, And so
Yeah.
then that just completely brings the edge off. And then being a human, like I get frustrated when I call and people are like reading from the prompter and answering your questions and they're just like a robot. And it's the most
Yeah.
frustrating thing in the world to call. And you're like emotionally, like, especially if it's an emotional call, you're like, I need help with my dog. They just chewed something or they just bit someone.
Yep.
And they're like ready and you have to like capitalize on that. And then, so we booked our consultation, we go right into selling the first training session. So the goal, and even with my appointment setter, is to get them to book the first session. One, it pays for my time to drive to Timbuktu. And two, it just makes the most sense in my experience because whether it's a puppy or whether it's a full-on behavior modification, especially if it's a puppy or a new home, rehome rescue, there's house manners, there's potty training, there's 333 rule, there's dental stuff that we need to chat about, there's diet we need to chat about, there's structure, what do our walk schedule look like, what does our setup look like. People walk me through their entire house. I've went to up it stairs into people's like back closets where they keep the dog and I'm like, oh God, thank God I shared my location today, because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, this guy's
Totally.
gonna lock me in his closet. But I'm like, yeah, this is a good setup. Like, okay, we can go back to the living room now. But it's like they walk me through because they really want the people that are calling for my services that are willing to pay 250 initially and 3, 4, 5,000 are like, this is what I'm using. Is this okay? This is also what I'm using. Is this okay? does this work? What are the ingredients? You know, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
great. So let's look at the ingredients. Yeah. So you see, we've got this, and we just explain. So it's never like, oh my God, you don't walk your dog. Well, now you wonder why you have issues. It's, you know, oh, hey, what's our walk schedule look like? Okay, we're not doing walks. Okay, yep. So that's what we're going to see. And it's just like walking them through that. So by the time it's like, okay, great, let's get you scheduled for your consultation. When is the best time for an hour and a half, you know? And it's like, tell me a day and time, and then they'll figure out the schedule with the husband, or they'll book me and reschedule if they need to. And then at the very end, it's like, okay, great, we've got you all booked up, and then it's just going to be the 250 for today. And it's like, boom, by then they're like, oh yeah, sorry, let me grab my card, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very rare at that point that they're like, and put on the brakes. And if they do, it's like, great, we'll schedule you for a 30-minute, especially if they're wanting a board and train out the gate, or if they want service dog stuff. I don't really push the individual session because there's a bigger like task at hand, and it's a possibility that I'm going to take that dog here really soon. And so it's not worth it. But those ones that are like, you know, it's great because that just 250, 250, 250. And
Yeah.
once I get there, then it's just a matter of like, you know, real temperament evaluation. Like if I need to have them go out for a walk, if there's a pit bull that might be aggressive or whatever, and just finding out, like when I was in an apartment, I didn't want to take big dogs, I didn't want to take aggressive dogs, you know, and all that stuff. And so what am I willing to take? And I ask how much they weigh, or I ask how old they are, I ask, you know, all that to find out if I'm even going to offer them a board and train or a private session. I don't take aggressive dogs anymore. I had a close call, and it just, you know, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could be more effective in a private session with them anyway, to
Yep.
help them learn. And so now I just won't offer a board and train for an aggressive dog, until
Yeah.
I'm able to customize it for them anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that something that's really cool about what you do is like you try and sell them on the $250 session, but if they don't go for that because they're like, oh, it's a lot of money, we're not sure what we're going to do yet, then you guys quickly pivot to like, well, we have this option where we can do a free consultation with you, right? So you don't just like let them walk away because like it's great to get the money, but at the end of the day, you're selling programs that are worth thousands of dollars, so you still want to get in front of them regardless, because then you know that if you get in front of them, I'm sure there's people who didn't buy the $250 lesson from you, but you still did the 30-minute session and then they went on to buy something from you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. Like we always start with the free temperament evaluation. That gets the conversation going. You know, oh, well, how does this work? Okay, great. Well, we come and do it. Does that, you know, how much is that going to cost? You're going to charge? Nope, it's free.
Yeah.
And then I sell, okay, what is this going to get me? Like, what's your first session? Look, you know, okay, well, we got anywhere from, you know, $1,000 packages to $5,000 packages. But
Yeah.
once I meet him, we are going to see if we're dealing with this, and this, and we're going to cover this, and this. And you're building that value because we're going to cover house manners. We're going to cover everything they said, the jumping, the mouthing, the
Yeah.
peeing, all the stuff. We're going to cover that in our first session. You're going to have all the tools you need. And I always say the exact same thing. You're going to have all the tools you need to hit the ground running. Or no, I say to get you either that or to get you pointed in the right direction so that you guys can get going. And they're just like, got it. And they're like ready. So I'm like, okay, great. If we do the first session, it's an hour and a half. So I'm just wrapping that in because it's like, it looks like you're on the other side of town. Did you want me to do the first session while we're there? It just makes the most sense. It's absolutely the most effective because you get the tools you need right away. And then we can
Yeah, that's
talk about
awesome.
packages, you know, and
Yeah,
they usually do it. But if not, it's like, oh yeah, no, we can do a consult. That's not a big deal. But that's just kind of what works best for what we've seen from our clients. And nobody bothers
exactly.
us about it.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's spot on. I think that's awesome. And I think that the reason that you're able to do that so successfully is because of how quickly you guys get the leads now. And, you know, if you're calling people back and trying to sell them on something, maybe they've talked to other dog trainers at that point who are like just doing free consultations and stuff like that. But yeah, going back to something you said before too. I mean, that is something that I realized a couple of years ago that it's so easy to do a sales call with somebody and never inspire confidence in them that you can help them with their problem. And so that is something I try and say to everybody like, hey, this is totally normal. This is something we've seen a million times. We can definitely help you with this. That alone is like what people want to see when they talk to somebody about their issue. It's like, can you help me solve my problem? I have dog training issues here. Can you help me fix that? And if you say I can help you with, you know, X, Y, and Z specifically, that's going to inspire so much confidence in them.
Yeah, rarely do I get questions about licensing. I had a cancellation tape, first ever board and train cancellation I've had, like less than 24 hours or ever in general.
Yeah.
And it's like, the business owner asking about all the contracts and all that, sends it all over, and it's like, oh, last minute, like, okay, thanks for your time. We're not going to drop the dog off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so weird. And then I went into the whole like, and then I'm like remembering from my sales experience, no, I could sound like their ex-wife, like whatever the situation is, they could have argued about the money after I left, like
Yeah.
threw the card down and made the deposit. Now she's on the text canceling, not my
Exactly.
business,
Yeah.
like this isn't a normal thing. I'm not going to kill myself over it. Maybe some bad timing, since I just moved into a house, like
Exactly.
I have 3 more consultations tomorrow, so it's like
Yeah.
not a big deal.
Yeah.
And if they're
No,
not
I mean,
right,
I've
they're
had people that have come to me. Yeah, 100%. I've it's very rare, but I'm thinking back to a time when I signed a guy up and the next day he came back and we talked about how, hey, you're paid, we're gonna get you started, we already started building on the ad account for you and stuff like that. And he just called me. He's like, dude, I want to do this, but my wife is like pregnant and we just bought a new home and I don't have the money. And I was like, I could have said to him in that moment, like, sorry, dude, you paid and you got to go. We cannot run ads, but you paid us, moving on. You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to let him walk away. I'm going to give him the money back and I'm going to move on with my life. Cause it's like, it's more of a hassle for me to have to like deal with that and try and negotiate with him or something like that. And just instead of being like, take the money back, like, congratulations on the new baby. Hope wish you nothing but the best, because all you can do is like there's something referred to as like the happy goodbye. It's like you let them walk away. You didn't try and force them into doing anything they didn't want to do, and there's a higher likelihood that they come back to work with you if you do it that way instead of being like, hey, well, we'll hold on to the money and then we'll use that towards the next program or something. Like you can do that stuff, but I think a lot of times people can just feel like they're getting robbed or something.
Right. Yeah, I had to do that in the beginning once or twice where they had paid a deposit and then like 3 weeks later the appointment came and they like canceled or whatever. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can't like give you, the deposit back.
Yeah,
But
and non-refundable deposits, that's kind of a different story. I'm talking
yeah.
about like, but yeah, I mean the point is like you just got to weigh out your options and be like, what do I want really what problem do I want to solve here? Do I want to create another problem for myself, like having to like explain to this person why why they have to go through and pay me more money or something like that?
Oh yeah, I had a situation 2 days ago. It was a Monday appointment and they canceled less than 24 hours before and they
Yeah.
obviously paid their $250 deposit and it's like, oh, we'd like to cancel and we want a refund. And I'm like, okay, it's like 6 o'clock at night and my appointment is at 10 a.m. with you. Like, and so
Yeah.
I was like, well, fortunately, because it's, less than 24 hours, it's a non-refundable deposit. Okay, fine. Well, then you need to come tomorrow. And didn't you say it was hour and a half deposit or an hour and a half session? And I was like, so I just put my phone down for like 10 minutes and like paused because I didn't want it to be like a charged response.
Yeah.
And so I just like thought myself through it and I was like, it's not worth the $250 to like fight with this
Yep.
guy. And so I just responded with him and I've heard some of this in like some of our coaching calls. And so I just
Yeah.
responded like, hey, I asked him why he wanted to cancel. It's like, we found another trainer we want to work with. Like they were gung ho, kept me on the phone for 45 minutes, husband and wife chit chatting. Like we had a great call. They've sent me videos to review. Like it was
Yeah.
totally out of left field that they canceled. So I was like, yeah, no worries. But it doesn't sound like you're going to retain, or it's going to be beneficial for, me to come. So I'm just going to go ahead and refund your 250. I wish you all the best with the trainer. Please let us know if you need anything in the future. We cover XYZ. Have a
Yeah.
great evening. And I refunded the money. He never replied. But when they have a bad experience with the other trainer, he's gonna be like, oh man, maybe I should have stuck with the other lady.
Yeah, it's just goodwill. And to me, it comes down to like, I've done it both ways where like somebody tries to kind of do something, they pull the wool over our eyes. And I'm like, I've done it both ways where I've just kind of let it go and, kept my serenity. And then on the other way, which is like, no, I'm going to like hold this person's feet to the fire and I'm going to tell them that like, this is what you agreed to. And there's times to do both. Like, I'm not saying that like we're pushovers by any means, but at the end of the day, like if I'm going to have to deal, if I know that if I do something and there's going to be a consequence of this person like freaking out, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I want you gone, and so like how do I make the problem go away? And that's typically how I, just like how I handle things in that moment, so to speak.
Yeah, I never understood like company being in HR, like why are we honest when we let people go? And now I
Yeah.
understand like why you just kind of do the happy goodbye because you don't
Yeah.
want someone to come and burn your house down.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like,
So,
without getting too far into that, like, you've had experiences where, like, you've had people that you've had to like deal with afterwards, like consequences of like clients or whoever it may be. And it's like, you can hindsight's 2020, but you can evaluate things and be like, was that worth, what that decision I made, was that worth it?
time is money, and the more time I'm wasting like dealing with somebody that's like, upset because I didn't give them their $250 back, even though it clearly says non-refundable deposit, and blah blah
Yes.
blah. It's like,
Yeah.
one, it's stressing me out, and two, I don't want to be stressed out, and three, it's like not worth my time because I'm more mad because I'm wasting time doing this other thing that's like completely pointless.
Yep.
Like not giving them their money back. So now I got a nasty Google review, or now I'm getting messages that they're upset. And it's just not worth it, to
Oh,
deal with
yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it's just give them their money back and kind of move on. They weren't necessarily our client in the first place. And we learned that a lot, especially back in the day, like in sales. Like this one stuck with me forever. You might sound like their boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, or you might sound like their ex-wife, or you might look like some people. Their voice drives me insane, and
Yeah.
you just don't understand that you might be one of those people. Like I'm a talker. People are like, whoa, you talk too fast. So I get it, so I have to let me slow down. This is like an older
Yeah.
couple. Like, let me match their pace, match their so, and in sales, like you have an older white lady, you might have a younger black gentleman come in, you might have a teenager who's buying a promise ring for their, new girlfriend, and you have to adjust that pitch and that,
Yeah.
experience to those people. So it's the same thing.
That's such a good point. You got to realize like who you're talking to and gear things towards that. It's not a one size fits all. But yeah, I think the takeaway from this is like exactly what you just said, which is like it all comes down to how do you want to use your time. Like you can cut off your nose to spite your face. You can literally do stuff over $100 that takes up 8 hours of your time. And you're like, why did I waste any time on that instead of just giving the $100 back? And I could have, taken, four consultations in that time and made an extra 16 grand in some cases. It's like you just have to be very vigilant about like what you spend your time doing and who you give it to.
And every time I give a discount, like the one that canceled today, I went out of my way. It was a business owner. He insisted on meeting on a Saturday afternoon. And it was like my first day off in like forever. I was gonna
Yeah.
like take the day off. And so I was like, fine, it sounds like it's gonna be worth something. So I go, he pays, he books, and then like cancels later. And it's like, he insisted on paying only $2,000. So I'm like, okay, we'll do slightly less than a 2 week board and train for the 2,000. Cause if they're really pushing me and they have a number, I'm like, okay, great. You're going to get a 10-day board and train then. And it's just divided out. So it's my budget is 195 a day, or my price is 195 a day. And I'm still charging them for a 2 week board and train. They're just getting a 12-day instead,
Yeah.
whatever the number is for them. But
Yeah.
I noticed when I get that, aside from the ones who genuinely don't have the money, like my brother's going into the hospital, like, I don't know if I can scrape up 3 grand. And then they scrape up 3 grand. Like, okay, if you need help and it's an aggressive pit bull, like I'm going to come do a free consultation, like an extra one or a free
Yeah.
session. But the ones that just, are fussing, and it's like they're a business owner and they made you come out on Saturday and da da da. And then I give him a deal and then he cancels. And I'm like, see, it's always those ones that like you
Exactly.
bend over
Yeah.
backwards for, that just kind of, so you're almost low, like, lowering your value. You don't want to act busy when you're not busy, but I mean, we're busy. So let's get you booked. Let's get your time
Yeah.
slot secured. I've got a dog going home tomorrow. I've got another
Yeah.
pup that's the same size. Now would be ideal.
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning. It's so true that one bad client can really take up the same amount of energy and time that like 10 good clients do, maybe more. It's so fascinating. The people that are like trying to nickel and dime you on price and start dates and what you'll do within a given program or something like that, you really need to take a step back. And I know it's hard to do, especially when you're first getting started and you need the money. Trust me, there's a time and a place for just taking on any client, as
Right.
uncomfortable as that may be. But at the end of the day, as soon as you start to grow and you get beyond that and you have enough leads coming in, stay away from those people because it's such a cliche. But again, they're going to take up so much more of your time than the good clients. It's like it's just not worth your time. You know,
Mhm.
my peace of mind, my time, my, my energy is so much better served going into like the happy, good clients like you, and spending time with people that are like energize you versus the people that are just like nothing but problems and a negative ball of energy. It's like, it's not worth working with those people.
Yep. Yeah. And those are the ones that, it's just maybe they're not end up being repeat customers or whatever. The customers
Yeah.
that I have that I nurture, like they're so thankful to have, like when I was a single dog mom and I wanted to go out of town and I didn't have anybody I trusted with my dog. I remember that. And so they're so thankful that they have someone they can trust. She picks the dog up today and she's like, I'm going to need you in 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
and he's just like the most ginormous Bernedoodle that like still pisses when he gets excited. And it's like he's not the most fun dog to deal with, but
Yeah.
I just love his family, like his parents. Like I know all about, their situation and, they're very like candid and, people feel like they can talk to me like, oh, hey, I got laid off. I'm doing this. Can you watch them for 2 days? It's not a money issue, but it's like they're comfortable telling you like what's going on in their life. And they're like, I might need you this weekend.
Yeah.
And to have somebody that they're like, I'm so happy that I can drop my dog off and I don't have to worry about them. I
Yeah.
know they're like hanging with you and they're also getting training and they come back and they're always more well behaved. Like it's just such a blessing.
Yeah. And the really ironic thing, it's so funny that, I had an experience with a really bad client one time, and I had to fire them. And she was like, she would scream and kick and curse and stuff like that. And I just was like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this.
Mhm.
And what I said to Jamie, my wife, one time was like, they think that that's how you motivate people to do things and like get results. And it's so ironic because I don't know, speaking from personal experience, like it has the complete opposite effect on me. I'm like, if you do that and you behave that way, I don't ever want to talk to you, but it's like the people that are like happy, fun people to be around. And it's like, okay, if there's a problem that we run into together, they're willing to work through it and they're not like, overly frustrated and stuff. It's like, those are the people that as a company and as an entrepreneur, you're going to bend as a coach, you're going to bend over to help. It's the
Mhm.
people that are like nothing but problems that you're just like, I don't want to, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's like, I just don't want to talk to you because it's like, it's so, there's just this negativity associated with it?
Yeah, it's like disrespectful. And, even with the stress of moving and like hiring 5 new people the week before I moved and then being like, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, I can't train you till next week. But I want to get you in. Like everybody wants a job. They're in school. They want, I'm finding the right people that are like patient with me. And then, like tons of questions come and like, there's moments I get frustrated and I'm very passionate. So my voice might get a little louder sometimes. And I grew up with a mother that cursed. So there's a lot of F-bombs that come out sometimes, but it's never geared towards like my employee or something. And then if
Right.
you have a
Exactly.
moment where I'm like, hey, yesterday was really frustrating, I make sure we follow up with like a good call and just be like, hey, you're good, right? I'm good, right? So yeah, things were crazy yesterday. Is there anything we want to adjust so that we can like better communicate next time or whatever? And my team is great because I tell them all the time, like, don't be afraid to come to me. Like, I don't care if I'm the business owner. I don't care if you're like, I get that there's people that are like nervous talking to like the boss or something, but I was like, you don't have to be like that here because if you need something, I'll get it. Whether it's a supply that we're missing, whether it's a training that you need, like if I see somebody doing something wrong, of course, my immediate response is like, why can't they do it right? And then I immediately pause and go, it's a training opportunity. It's my
Yeah.
job now. Like I'm sitting on my hands and I'm starting to use all my skills to coach this new gen. Yeah, some of these people are older than me that work for me, but this new generation or wherever it is that they want to go. Some of these people are in school for veterinary, for finance, for nursing. Their end goal isn't to be like this professional dog trainer, but if they want to come with me, like we'll do it.
Yeah.
My goal is to cross train them. If they want to just be here and walk dogs and do that, that's fine too. But if you want to move up and be cross trained and do all this, you're going to get these skills. You're going to get this opportunity to learn new stuff. And if you're good at it, I can use you even more. And I feel like people really appreciate that because the times where I'm moving and I'm stressed and I'm like, wow, I'm like, packing and like my house is
Yeah.
in boxes and I'm also trying to run a business. And I might be like, just go and do it, like whatever you need to do. And they just go and do it and they don't take offense, they realize that like sometimes I'm just busy. And I
Yeah.
can't like, so and other days I'm like, I'll go step by step with them, like push here, do this. And other days I'm like, hey, let me know if you need anything, just try and figure it out.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to understand when it comes to hiring people is just knowing that they are going to mess things up, and that's okay. And the only way that they're going to get past that is, going back to what you were talking about before with Betty, I think that's a really profound thing that you said, that you were like sitting there on pins and needles waiting for her to do the first call. Cause like, is she going to mess it up? What if the consultation doesn't get booked? And I listened to that call and I know I would have booked it. It's like, again, what it comes back to is, yeah, but if I don't ever let her go through that learning phase and mess it up a little bit, then I just resign myself to the fact that I have to do it for the rest of my life. I have to train every dog. I need to answer every phone call. I need to put in every single invoice. It's like you need to give people the leeway. We all have screwed things up in different jobs. I'm sure that I've had jobs in the past where my boss was like pulling out his hair, looking at like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
like that's the only way you learn is like by going through it and messing it up and having the will to get better.
Yeah, I just put myself in their shoes. Like I've been there, I wouldn't want to be screamed at. I wouldn't want to be, whatever. And I learned by doing. So it was
Yeah.
actually okay that there was a million calls that like maybe I had missed or didn't get a chance to follow up with from October, November, because as she listened and moved them along in the pipeline and called them back and they're like, screw you, get over it. It's been 30 days. Like we hired someone. She's
Yeah.
not taking it personal because it's what she does. And I'm not wasting. Oh, I remember you said like, but are you really going to do it? Because I'm like, I'm just going to clear these out myself. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. But are you really going to sit there for 10 hours? And then it's not just
Yeah.
calling them because they're not going to answer. You got to follow up. And then I was like, there's no way in hell I'm doing this. So that was where it made sense to have Betty. And that's what brought her up to speed. Now we bumped our ads and we're getting calls regularly, the fresh new leads. And she's already like, hey, I got this
Closing them. Yeah.
because I worked on all these other ones that maybe were like cold leads or warm leads that maybe
Yes.
can
Yep.
now. So it
Yeah,
worked
that's
out.
exactly right. So listen, let's do this. I know you have other things you got to get onto today, but I want to finish up with one last question. And then you and I got to talk a little bit about one of your new programs you're thinking about launching after this call. But um, the question I always like to end with is putting yourself back in the shoes that you were in 6 months ago, right? Say there's somebody else that's in that same exact situation. What is the advice that you would give to yourself or to that other person now, knowing and having gone through all of this and just the experience that you have now? What's the advice you'd give to that person?
Oh man, you're gonna make me cry. I like honestly just trust your gut. And then I have this little plaque that says like the only way to finish is to start. And
Yeah.
that's what got me to start my social work degree during COVID. So I would just say like, um, I'm big on like small one-liners, but everything happens for a reason. And like you have to trust your gut. You have to bet on yourself. Like
Yeah.
my confidence has gone up tenfold, regardless of like a ex-partner or whoever, like who's like, you're not gonna be great at that, oh, you probably shouldn't start a business. Oh, how are you gonna make that happen? Or you talk too much, or you don't ever let people talk, so nobody's gonna buy from you. Like literally just saying, fuck all of that. Like I'm going to focus on like what needs to happen to like meet my goal. And like I've created vision boards, like I've done things where I'm writing in my 5-minute journal and it's like, I want to travel. So I'm moving and taking small steps towards that way. And I'm like, I don't want to, I want to, when I started with you, I was like, I don't want to like sit here and train dogs in Las Vegas for the rest of my life. Like I want to travel with my dogs. Like I'm a single
Yeah.
lady, I want to see the world. Like I fell in love with traveling. That is my goal. I want to move to another country and like go.
Yeah.
And so how am I going to get there? And just like taking whatever that end goal is and just kind of like running with it. Like don't, like, yeah, like proceed with caution, but it's almost like throw caution to the wind in some ways because you
Yeah.
have to like spend money to make money. Like I never understood that phrase before, but it's like you have to, now that I'm a business owner, it's like you have to spend money to make money. So you have to
Yeah.
start somewhere to get to and so I had an ex, I wrote a $5 million check out to, like Jim Carrey did. And he's like, boom, right after that, he got the Bruce Almighty gig. And he was like, now
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
got my $5 million check. And I remember writing myself a $5 million check probably 3, 4, 5 years ago and putting it on my cork board that I have sitting right here. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get there someday. And my ex is like, well, you have to actually be doing something to like get there. You just like do HR, And I'm like, damn, bro, like that's so messed up. But it's true. Like,
Mhm.
it's true. You have to kind of be doing something. You can't just be like, man, I really, really want to take my dogs on a private jet and fly the world because I would never put my dog in cargo. And the steps that it takes for me to get there, or last year before I was laid off to take them to Mexico, made it so that I got my global entry. I got my TSA pre-check. I have clear. I don't have to take my shoes off. I can just go straight through with my dog so that they don't piss anywhere, or,
Yeah.
whatever it was to get there. Like I just took the steps. And so it's like, that's the end goal. But this is kind of like what happens if you like reach for the stars. Like, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
want to take my dog in a private jet one day and go to Europe. That'd be super freaking cool. But I have to start a business first, and I have to do right by people, and I have to train a bunch of dogs, and then I have to like get investors for my next business. And so you have to start somewhere. So it's like, just literally, like the only way to finish is to start. And like, I think the biggest thing that I've taken out of it is like, I've always raised the bar. So like the bar's always here. And as soon as I get here, I remember, never forget saying that when I have a BMW and I have a 3-car garage with a pool in the backyard, like I made it. I had a 3-car garage with a pool in the backyard and a BMW, and I left because I was unhappy with that life. And now I'm living my dream. And sometimes I have to pause and be like, oh, wow, like last year, I'm like, I'm going to be, I love to be a business owner someday and like, write my own schedule and like manage my own team. Um, and so you just have to like make it happen.
Yeah. Man, I love that. I mean, you got to bet on yourself and you got to like invest in yourself. The amount of people that I think about this sometimes, and like this just means I need to do a better job at marketing and getting our message out there. But the amount of people that I have spoken to or see on social media, and you know that they're kind of like not hitting their goals. You know that they're floating between like 1,000 or 3,000 to 5K a month or something, and it's very inconsistent. And they have the capacity to be able to do 10K, 15, 20, 25 grand, upwards of that in some cases a month, and they just never take the leap of faith. And they're just like they're scared to take a shot on goal. And it's like, man, as cliche as this may seem, like you really do only get one chance at this, as far as I know. I mean, maybe reincarnation is
Yeah.
something, but the truth is like you really only get one shot at this.
Mhm.
And you don't have necessarily, you're not guaranteed 50 years, you know? I think sometimes people feel like too, like who am I to start marketing? Who am I to make these claims in my advertising or something? And be like, there's all these other people that have come before me and these other trainers, and I don't want to ruffle their feathers. It's like, the truth is like, you may upset somebody. First off, they probably won't even notice. They probably won't even care. That's number one. Number two is, are you really going to spend the rest of your life worrying about what other people think? And like that's something that I think a lot about. It's like as soon as I'm like fearful of doing something, as soon as I'm fearful of like taking the leap of faith and jumping in headfirst into like the next marketing initiative or making a claim on social media or something like that, it's like, well, what if this person gets upset by it? It's like I just don't I can't worry about that. And so if you're listening to this right now, this is really like a call to action to be like, go and bet on yourself. It doesn't need to be working with Top Dog Advertising. As much as I'd love to work with you, try something new. Go invest in yourself. Go invest in your business, because I guarantee the fruits of that are going to be so much better than what you have right now if you know that you're underachieving.
Yeah, absolutely. It started with me having a career. And then once I did that and I like went to the top of where I wanted to go, I realized I didn't want to be the CEO of somebody else's company anymore, because that's
Yeah.
what I wanted when I was 16. Now I want my
Yeah.
own business. So just keep raising the bar.
It's awesome because not most 16-year-olds are thinking about being like the CEO of a
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
Certainly not what I was thinking about when I was 16.
Right.
Yeah. But listen, we'll wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you to you. I mean, you're like such an awesome client. I mean, you just do exactly what we ask you to do. And it's just been amazing to like watch you grow this business over the last couple of months, going from $0 a month to 10K, 12K a month. It's stuff that people dream about. And I think that you've made this very digestible, for people listening to this, that, you can do this and you can build a business out of your home and you can prove the naysayers wrong, whether it's like your mom, an ex, anybody, friends who are just
Yourself.
like, hey, yeah, play it safe, go get a job, you lost your job, go get another one. It's like, you have to bet on yourself and do what you want. So with that being said, Desiree, is there anything else you want to like wrap up with for today or anything like that?
Yeah, no, that was the biggest thing I think in the very beginning was like people were like, go get a job. What are you doing, psycho? Like,
Yeah.
you gave who what amount of money and you're doing what? Like, I
Yeah.
lost friends. Like, I have friends that don't support me or that just don't understand. And it's like, just do it, make it
Yeah.
happen. Because this vision is like, you're more powerful than you give yourself credit for. So what you have in here, like anything that you see that's tangible, it's like it started here. Somebody had to build this computer that we're talking on. Like I still don't understand how you can see me physically in this camera.
It's like built out of
But
rocks. When you really
yeah,
trace
but
it
it's
back,
like,
it's like, yeah, it's stuff people
yeah.
pulled out of the dirt, you know?
Yeah.
Insane. But anyway, we can wrap it up here. But I just want to say thank you for doing this. And we'll have to do another interview in the future when you're at like 20, 25K a month and give everyone the update and stuff like that. But sincerely, thank you so
Yes.
much. And just hang on after this because we'll talk a little bit more. But I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. If you guys have any questions for me or Desiree, feel free to drop them in the comments down below and we'll do our best to answer them for you. But as always, we appreciate your support and we'll see you guys in the next one. See you guys.